Hello, Home Slices. It's Kiara with Home Slice Adulting coming to you with a review for Iyanla Fix My Life Season 7, Episode 7, called All Aboard the Trauma Train. First off, thank you for clicking on this video. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And yeah, just thanks for coming to join me today. I have had a busy week, a busy weekend. But I am dedicated to making sure I stay on top of these Iyanla Fix My Life reviews. So let's just jump right into it. I've had a really busy and kind of rough week. So let's go ahead and get into this. So initially, I was not going to take notes. I was just I was going to go off the cuff and kind of just do a review that way. But when I saw how many people were involved and like the names that I probably wasn't going to be able to get straight and the ages and all that type of stuff, I was like, okay, I have to take notes. So I'm going to be reading from my notes for the most part. So let's talk about the guests that were on the Iyanla show. So we have Grandmama Lula, who's 72 years old. She receives a picket sign that regards her as the foundation and also a member of the silent generation. We have Uncle Daddy Herbert, which is so funny because I've heard the phrase Uncle Daddy before, but it wasn't used in that way to say that like you're the uncle but you're also like the patriarch of the family. It wasn't used that way. It was more like when your mom brought over a man to the house and she called him your uncle, but they were sleeping together. I think that's the way I heard it. But anyways, y'all let me know if I'm getting it mixed up. Anyway, so we got Uncle Daddy Herbert, who is 65. He's been labeled as the nemesis, and he's a part of the baby boomer generation. We have Justin, who's 28 years old, who is Yolanda's oldest son. He's been labeled as collateral damage, and he's a part of the millennial group. We have Dericka, who is 31, who is Justin's wife, and is labeled as fallout, who is also a millennial. We have Lauren, who is 26, who's Yolanda's daughter, who is also listed as collateral damage and a millennial. And then we have KJ, who is 18, who is Yolanda's youngest son, and he's labeled as ignored and Generation Z. Then finally, we bring in Yolanda, who's 44 years old. She is labeled as breakdown, breakdown, and she's labeled as and a part of Generation X. So there's this big generation gap that Iyanla highlights on the floor and is saying that the way that you all see it is through a lens of your particular generation. Like the way you all see the trauma that's happening here is from your different perspectives based on, the time that you were born and all that type of stuff. And she put a lot of emphasis on them being from 5 different generations, which when you hear 5 generations, you don't think of like the age groups, right? Like when I hear 5 generations, I think of great-great-grandmother, great-grandmother, grandmother, daughter, and son, or whatever, but I caught on eventually. But anyways, so y'all, this family has some trauma. This family has some history that is interesting. And I guess we'll just go ahead and get right into it. So we see Iyanla pull Miss Lula aside. Again, Miss Lula is Yolanda's mom. And of course, there's always a question, what do you want from this process? And Miss Lula wants the wall that she has built up to be gone. She wants healing. Apparently she was in a relationship with a white woman named Nancy for 45 years, starting in the 1970s, in North Carolina. And when I heard that, I was like, are you kidding me? Like, and when I say, are you kidding me? I'm saying that it was like very daring and very bold for her to be in a lesbian relationship at that stage in America's history, particularly an interracial relationship. So I thought that was really interesting. But then it got weird because she shielded her children from the fact that she was a lesbian, despite the fact that Miss Nancy lived with her and slept in the same bed. So there was no holding hands, no kissing in front of the kids. And so they never really talked about the fact that she was a lesbian, which is astonishing, but goes back to the fact that Iyanla has labeled Miss Lula as a part of the silent generation, right? So apparently Miss Lula tricked a man who, was kind of sweet on her into impregnating her, even though she was a lesbian. There was also a time where apparently Miss Lula has 4 other children who are older than Yolanda. And that relationship was abusive, if I'm getting the history right. And so eventually she got out of that relationship and then got into a relationship with Miss Nancy, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. And then it got to a point where Miss Nancy had lung disease or had lung cancer, and she was in her last days. And Dericka, who is Justin's wife, had just become an RN. And they were provided with the option of putting Miss Nancy on a morphine drip. And Dericka's professional opinion was that if they put Miss Nancy on the morphine drip, that they would lose her and she would never wake up. She would be, unconscious until she passed away, I guess. And for whatever reason, Miss Yolanda felt like, how dare you try to tell us what to do? And Miss Lula went to the bathroom. Next thing you know, she comes back. The morphine drip has started, and Miss Nancy is non-responsive. And Miss Lula's upset that she didn't get to spend her last moments with Miss Nancy because Yolanda pitched a fit, and caused a rift between her and Dericka and all that stuff. So, come to find out, a few days later, Miss Lula invites the kids over, I guess to, mourn together, spend time together, talk about good times, whatever. And Herbert, Lula's brother, and Yolanda end up getting into a fight, and Yolanda sends Herbert to jail. And after the trial for that situation happened, Yolanda posts a picture calling Miss Lola the B word, or basically saying that she was a mother who didn't deserve to have children. So that was an issue. So the trial happens. The charges against Herbert had dropped, and Miss Lula hasn't seen Yolanda in a year, and she's afraid of Yolanda taking her love away from her. And at Miss Yolanda's request, has stayed away from her own grandchildren. And I don't want to villainize Yolanda. I also don't want to give her a pass because there's clearly some stuff going on with her, things that we know about her past, that are not okay and that contribute to the way that she is now. However, the way she's being described up to this point as the root of all the issues, and as somebody who is holding the family hostage, is not okay. Like, I would venture to say that a lot of us know people who are so volatile or who are so emotionally manipulative that they hold the family hostage. or that they hold people around them emotionally hostage. And I think that that's one of the situations that this family is in. But anyways, we see Herbert says he pushed Yolanda to get her out of his face. He got charged with assault and battery. He says that he's afraid to stand up for his sister now because the last thing he wants to do is go back to jail. He's too old for that. Apparently when Miss Nancy was alive, she would put her foot down, but not really. It was like she would put her foot down and then slide Yolanda some money. So that's an issue. Okay. So Miss Nancy actually spoiled Yolanda and did not provide any structure. He described Yolanda as a terrorist and an abuse victim. So next we see Yolanda. She answers the question, what do you want to get out of this experience? And she says she wants a loving family. She does not know her dad and has issues with her identity because of that. She admits that she is spoiled and that growing up she had no consequences and no guidance because her, mothers either were not there or placated her or gave her money or things and spoiled her instead of giving her discipline. She explained the picture that she had posted about her mother being a B word and not being worthy of having children or whatever it said. And basically said she did it out of revenge and wanted to hurt her mother the same way that she was hurt, since her mother stood behind Herbert instead of standing behind her when it came to the jail situation. The thing about her account of what happened is that she talked about what her uncle did, but she didn't talk about how she was out of line too. It seemed very strange that she did not talk about her own behavior in that moment, because it seems unreasonable for me for a 60-year-old man to just attack her out of nowhere. According to him, she was in his face yelling and all that stuff, and it doesn't justify him putting his hands on her. However, it just does not seem like he would just haul off and hit her for just sitting there. So she did seem to skate past her own responsibility. But anyways, we find out that Lauren, Yolanda's daughter, was in an abusive relationship, and that Justin was friends with the abuser. And Yolanda said that KJ, her youngest son, couldn't be around that individual, but they never had a conversation about it. And it was interesting because Iyanla was like, you're the person who brought abusive relationships into their lives. You're the reason that they saw that and witnessed it. So the fact that you don't have a conversation about what it means to be in an abusive relationship and that it's something that they shouldn't do themselves, yet you feel like later on in life you get to dictate what happens around that. And that's not how it works. So next we see Justin and Dericka. They have a contentious relationship with Yolanda. Yolanda has threatened and apparently has actually pulled up with a knife to, threaten or attack Dericka. She didn't, Justin is saying Dericka is a nurse. They didn't listen to Dericka. He felt like Yolanda did the opposite of what Dericka said just to spite Dericka, but then what Dericka said would happen actually happened. So he doesn't understand that. Justin said that his last memory of seeing Yolanda with Miss Nancy was her saying, you're not going to be here to, give me $100 every once in a while. So make sure you leave me something. And so he kind of lost respect for his mom because he felt like, her relationship with Nancy was based all around money. And part of that is Nancy's responsibility because of the nature of the relationship that she built with Yolanda, but for that to be your thoughts when somebody's on their deathbed is a little much. So I understand his sentiments. He hasn't seen his mom in 3 years, which was amazing. And Yolanda walked into the room like she had just seen them recently, earlier in this show. But she left her son behind for a husband that was abusive to her and basically verbally said, if I have to choose between my son and my husband, I will choose my husband. So he has a lot of abandonment issues, a lot of trust issues with his mom. And it's like they've gone on his entire life. And also the fact that that his wife has had issues with his mom is just not good at this point. So we see Lauren and KJ, they're caught in the middle. And they say basically that Justin is so anti-Yolanda that if they are on good terms with Yolanda, that he's not on good terms with them. And their relationship is distant at times, and Yolanda and Justin, according to KJ, are actually the same person. They said at some point, Yolanda has basically cut off all of her children except for KJ, and she's even called the police on Lauren. And, Iyanla says nobody's safe with Yolanda. So next we have everybody together, and Iyanla said after talking with all of them, everybody here has a role in the breakdown. And Herbert begins to apologize to Yolanda for what happened and basically said, you never have to worry about it again. I lost control. And in that moment, something disgusting and nasty was triggered up in Yolanda. And instead of doing things differently, like she said she would, she began to go into this blame game, and you're lying, and you dragged me across the floor. It wasn't just you pushing me. You threw me into some chairs. She was just really triggered and felt like he was minimizing the situation. And Herbert was like, even your lawyer said you changed it 3 times. It was a hot mess, okay? And there was something about, and Yolanda ended up calling him a punk as well. And it just was a hot mess, y'all. Okay, so anyway, Iyanla was like, not on my watch, okay? You don't get to, say that to an elder male in my presence. So, everybody take your picket signs and write down what you did wrong. And she was saying, like, people are just too busy fighting to be right when they need to, when they really need to accept responsibility for their part and move forward. So it's day 2, and Yolanda starts to explain herself about why she thinks she went into a fit of rage when she was talking to her uncle the other day. And there was something about Yolanda that felt pretty insincere to me. And what I mean by that is there are people who are manipulative to the point where they tell you everything that you want to hear so that they appear to be right or to be changing. And it came across as if I'm here, but I've already done some of this internal work. But when people bring things up to me and try to hold me accountable, I'm going to forget them to make me look better. And it came across as if I did all of this internal work and figured out that I haven't healed from my abusive relationships just so it makes her look good on national television, I guess, or makes her look good in front of Iyanla. And I'm not convinced, based on some of the things that happened afterward in the show, that it was actually genuine. It kind of came off as disingenuous. It came off as like she was playing up for the cameras or making herself look better or whatever. So anyways, Iyanla kind of called her out on that and said that it felt like you purposely chose not to do things differently, and that you did not come with humility like you said you were going to come with. You just kind of lost it. And so she was saying that, she was growing up and she was looking for discipline, and she found it in abusive men. And I thought that was really interesting. That's something that I had never thought about before. about a person who hadn't had discipline in their childhood seeking it from an abusive man. I thought that was actually a really good insight. That there was no conversations about sex, and she was saying that her Uncle Herbert also wouldn't talk to her after she got pregnant with Justin. And basically she kind of was saying hurt people, and she owns up to that. And she didn't realize that she structured her relationship dynamics with her children so that they wouldn't tell her the truth. And so they come up with like a code word, because she again, one of these things that, the internal work that she's already done, she talks about the trauma train. And so she was basically saying, I'm going to say toot toot when I need some support, because I'm being triggered. But Iyanla was like, well, you need to take some responsibility too. So moving on, we see Lauren talk to Yolanda, and Lauren says, it's none of my mom's business about what I've been going through in my abusive relationship. So Yolanda had a weird response to her daughter being abused. Her response to her daughter being abused was to abuse her further. That is my perception of what Yolanda did to her. Lauren said, everything that you did, all the antics you pulled, all the calling the police, all the telling my business to people that I don't have relationships with, actually drew me closer to the man that was abusing me. So it had the opposite effect. You threatened to take my kids away. And Iyanla was saying, the way you look at the world, you are projecting that onto everybody else. You view the world through this battered woman who is overcompensating for the fact that she didn't have the willingness, the ability to walk away and get out of that relationship. And you cannot make everybody else responsible for the fact that you were not the person that you wanted to be at the time, or that you did, that you had grown up in an environment where that was normalized. You can't push this newfound freedom, or not even freedom, because I feel like she's still bound and enslaved by this abusive woman mentality, and it's just overcompensating while she's trying to come out of it. But what I'm saying is that the woman is projecting onto her daughter. And Iyanla says, how are you going to do it different? And she says, I'm going to trust my daughter's decision making and back off, which is great. So next we see that we talked to Uncle Herbert a little bit, and he says he doesn't acknowledge that he actually abandoned Yolanda when she got pregnant with Justin. He was all she had to do was come and talk to me or whatever. And Iyanla was like, you're not the come and talk to me uncle. You are the provider and protector. You're not the conversationalist. So don't say that she could come and talk to me about anything. I mean, depending on where a person thinks they are, or where they think they fit into a relationship or family dynamic, they will make up stories about what they did or where they were or what they could have been or what they could have done. And considering how he's old school and he's a baby boomer, I could see him rejecting the fact that she was a teenage mother. And when you feel rejected, the last thing I'm going to do is ask you for something. So that didn't make sense, but whatever. And moving on, we see KJ, and Iyanla tells him that Yolanda's actions towards Uncle Herbert were inappropriate. And then she wants him to start writing down what he thinks everybody's roles are, because she wants him to be a demonstration of how even the youngest person can get a clearer view of the problems, because because of their age, they are less bound to the stories that each person has told, and can be more solution oriented than holding on to old hurts and whatnot. So we see Justin. Justin doesn't trust his mom with his heart. Yolanda says she lost respect for Justin because he supported a man beating on his sister. And Iyanla was like, what? So apparently they were going out on, Justin and Dericka were going out on double dates and doing things like that with Lauren and her abusive partner. And Yolanda perceived that to be supporting the man who is beating on her daughter. And what's interesting is Justin's explanation of what he was doing. He said, this was my way of keeping my sister close. Because the last time I had somebody have to choose between me and their man, they chose their man. And I'm talking about you, Yolanda. Yolanda, you taught me that if somebody had to choose between me and their man, they were going to choose their man. So I figured out that the best way to protect my sister was to keep them close. Again, it all comes back to Yolanda. It's Yolanda that's messing everything up. And again, Iyanla says you have to stop imposing your lack of healing on everybody else. And the fact that she was measuring Justin up to this imaginary version of a man that probably doesn't even exist is crazy. Like, Yolanda admitted that she didn't grow up with a father, so she really didn't have a male figure, even though she did have two moms. She doesn't respect Uncle Herbert, so you know that's not the vision of a man that she's measuring him up to. She made up an imaginary man and is saying her son doesn't measure up to him. And just, you could see how shut down Justin was, and he just was not here for it. He just was not here for the mess, okay? And then there's the fact that she didn't even raise Justin to be this imaginary version of the man that she has in her head. So Yolanda, you're just crazy. I don't understand what your expectations are. And then Iyanla used an interesting term and called her a provocative victim, and that she provokes people and then backs off and says, oh, you're attacking me. Justin ain't looking at his mom, and Yolanda just creating excuses and saying, you know, he's a great man and I respect him, in this really sarcastic tone. And I'm like, that is so disgusting. Like, why would you talk about your son like that? I really don't get it. But Iyanla was saying mothers destroy sons. Don't talk to your kids about one another. And she has them clean the slate. She has them breathe on a plate and throw it down. And Justin is not willing to really let go. He says that he wants to clean the slate, but he obviously is not ready, because what happens next is another blowout between Yolanda and Justin. Because they immediately, once they're alone with each other, they immediately start kind of rehashing all the things. Well, you want to know what hurt me? No, we're supposed to be cleaning the slate. The slate is supposed to be clean. And so they go back into these old habits of rehashing things. Justin gets mad because he thinks his mom is not being honest about being all about the money. And Iyanla's like, y'all need to mind your own business. Justin basically is saying, I don't want to mess with my mom no more. I don't even want my kids around her. There's a conversation about that because Lauren is upset that she can't spend time with Justin's kids in her mom's house. And there's some issues with that. And Iyanla works that out, and they talk about boundaries and blah, blah, blah. So we see Iyanla and Yolanda. And Iyanla says your kids don't trust you, and that you need to do a moral inventory and to admit to your kids that you were a bad mom. So next we have everybody sit down together. Iyanla invites Miss Nancy into the space, and everybody gets an apple for something that went wrong in their lives. But at the end of the day, Lula and Yolanda get most of the apples put in their lap because of the role that each of them have played in not establishing good communication, or not talking about things when they obviously need to talk about them. The things really do fall into the laps of those two people. So, Iyanla wants to create a safe space, and so it's KJ's turn to tell everyone, or express to everyone what he thinks the problems are. He held his mom and Uncle Herbert accountable for the things that they had done. He called out Miss Lula for being a closeted lesbian, and Miss Lula apologizes to Herbert. Because she obviously feels guilty for getting him into a situation where he ended up getting arrested. So, KJ also asked about not being raised with Justin, and Justin says, Yolanda abandoned me. She went to New York, and that was it. So I have abandonment issues when it comes to her. And Yolanda, for the first time, well, not for the first time, but for one of the only times in the show, does toot toot and basically says that she's being triggered. And I guess if the truth is triggering, then, toot toot. Okay. So anyways, we see Yolanda and Lula have a conversation. Apparently Nancy didn't have no money, and that any money that Nancy gave to Yolanda came from Miss Lula. Which is really interesting and really changes up the dynamic for me, especially considering the fact that Yolanda claims that she knows that Miss Nancy didn't have any money, and that any money Miss Nancy did have came from Miss Lula. Then there was the issue of money came up again, which she was basically like, I didn't get nothing. And Miss Lula was saying, you get your inheritance when I die, not after Nancy died. I don't know what the heck you're talking about. So the money issue came up again. I think that there's actually really something to that. But anyways, Miss Lula tells Yolanda how she met Miss Nancy. And then Yolanda tells her mom how she found out that her mom was a lesbian. It was interesting how Miss Lula didn't remember Yolanda asking about where she had come from or asking about her father as a child. And it's like, oh, it's super convenient that both of y'all have selective memories. Okay, so she also told Yolanda how she came to be, and Yolanda did not know that, and she was like, if I would have known this, I would have felt a lot more special. And basically saying that the other 4 kids were in existence when Nancy came around, but Yolanda was the only one that was born during the time that Miss Nancy and Lula were together. So she had a special relationship with Nancy. So at the end of the show, we see Justin wants everybody to be accountable. Lula wants peace. Herbert wants to be a role model and to get all the male family members together. Yolanda wants forgiveness and finally asks Herbert for forgiveness. And Herbert don't care. He don't care. He's over it. Yolanda and at the end of the show, of course, they do the little updates. Yolanda and Lula have a fragile relationship but talk daily. I don't know why you would talk daily to somebody who you are walking on eggshells around, or is, one word away from a argument or a disagreement. Something about that comes across as like being disingenuous to me. Like, why are we talking every day if I feel like our relationship is fragile? That doesn't make sense to me. But anyways, we see Herbert and Dericka haven't spoken to Yolanda since filming. I feel like both of them have a good reason not to speak to her after filming. I feel like that there was not a real come to Jesus moment with Dericka, who seemed to be one of the targets of Yolanda's rage. And apparently, Yolanda and Justin have scheduled a counseling session. So that's good to see that Justin is taking a step forward with his mom. So that was it for this episode. This was really interesting. This was something about this episode felt different and weird in a way that I was like, I wonder if this is going to help this family or Yolanda in particular. So, excuse me. And let me know what y'all think. Do y'all think that Yolanda really got something out of this situation, or if this was just a way for her to look good on TV? I don't know. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and to follow me on social media. Peace out, home slices.